Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk, and today I thought we would have a look at this. Now you've probably seen this in some of my previous videos. I've used it as a test monitor, and I used to use it with my Amiga 1200. And when I started remodeling my little man cave up here, I put it to one side for the time being, and I've come to set it up today, and it's absolutely dead. I don't know what's happened to it. I'll just demonstrate. I know this IEC works. I've just been using it with a little power supply, so I know that this is good. And if I plug it into the TV, and this is a proper TV, it's not a VGA monitor or anything like that. Nothing happens. I press the power button. Again, absolutely nothing happens. It is, all intents and purposes, dead as a doornail. So I thought, forgive me, I am still testing lots of Spectrum tapes, so I will be, you'll hear Spectrum loading noises in the background as we do all this. So I'm still going through. This should be a fun one. Next one, animated strip poker for the Spectrum. Let's see if that'll load. Yeah, we'll stick that on while we investigate this this monitor and find out exactly what's gone awry with it. So let's get this, see if this will load while we're working on this. Anyway, without further ado, let's crack into this and see if we can find out what's gone wrong with it. It could be as simple as a fuse. You never know, but generally speaking, fuses don't fail that often for no reason. It can happen, it's not unheard of, but usually a fuse blows for a reason. And it's interesting that it's completely dead. There's no signs of life from it whatsoever, which doesn't, it could be capacitor related, but usually when you've got a bad capacitor, it at least tries to start up, and then the switch mode power supply fails due to the bad capacitor. But in this instance, like I said, it is just completely and totally dead. So we'll bring you down onto the monitor so you can see what I'm doing here. Let's see if we can get this base off. And then we've got to figure out how the hell to get into this thing, because unfortunately on this modern consumer electronics, screws are expensive, and they don't like using them. They prefer things just to clip together nowadays, which I absolutely hate. Come on, out screw. That's one screw out. I've got one more screw stuck in, and until I get that screw completely out, I can't get the base off. I'm pretty sure I can't get the bezel. Ah, there we go, that's out. I won't be able to get the bezel out until I get the base off. Let's try that now. I probably won't use the base in its new configuration anyway. It takes up less room if I just use it like that. Oh, excuse me, it's a heartburn. But no, I can see absolutely no other screws. Oh well, that didn't work. The as you can see, the oh, you can't see, but no, that didn't load. Let's load that to the front of there. In fact, this monitor as well, I'll just show you this because this is going to be another repair. If you can see, my other monitor's not behaving too well either. It started doing this recently, and if you basically unplug the signal and plug it back in a few times, let's see if we can plug that back in, it comes back again. So that's another one we're going to have a look at. Let's try loading this as a 48K tape, because some of these you do have to load as 48K if they are of that era. J dash enter, let's press play and see what happens there. Anyway, let's get back to the point of this video, which is this other monitor which is playing up. So as we can see, we don't seem to have any screws to get in here, so it looks like it's going to be a case of getting something into these edges. Move some of these tapes out of the way, and then we will see don't really like using a screwdriver like this. You do bound to damage something, but honestly don't know how else you are meant to get in this thing. It does look like it is just clipped together. Let's try. So unfortunately I think I may damage the plastic just getting. Ah, there we go, that's one clip out. There we go. I think it is just a case of walking along it with something and getting all the clips to release. I absolutely hate this form of construction. And it is just done to save a few pence per unit, and the fact that you're not meant to repair anything anymore. You're meant to throw it away and buy a new one. Unfortunately, I can't afford to go out and buy a new monitor every couple of months and what have you, and when, generally speaking, you can actually get back in them. Well, hopefully get in there. Oh, well, that's not good. Did I catch the power supply to the... Yes, I did. I'll have to start that again with the Spectrum. I actually caught the power supply to it and knocked it off. Never mind, let's restart that while we're here and we're waiting. And it's doing that silly daft bouncing thing again. Let's try that while we're up here. There we go, that's stable now, and let's start that again. I love multitasking. Okay, so that's started again, and let's get back to the monitor. So these are an absolute pain in the backside to get into. I think we're there. Yeah, looks like the back comes off this and leaves everything attached to the front. Let's have a further clip round here and have a look. This is going to be a bugger to get in without damaging anything, I can see that. I think we're nearly there. Just this top section here that's not unclipped yet. What an absolute bugger to get in this is. Remind me, when I'm looking for future monitors, make sure they've got screws in them so I can access them in the future, because this is a mare to get in. Absolute mare. There we are, I think we're in. And we've got the back off. Okay, so what it is, what makes this is Samsung, so you're not going to expect utter junk. I would have liked it being Samsung to at least have had some screws in it, but there you go, we can't have everything. So I think what we need to do is get in here and have a look to see what's going on. I'll disconnect these two connectors. That speaker's there, with that speaker. That, bit of a weird way of doing it, never mind. So let's see if we can get you out of there as well. I'm just doing this to make life a little bit easier, so obviously I'm going to have to access inside there. Again, I can't see any screws. No, even the shielding's held on with like little silly clip things. Well, this is how electronics are going now, it's ridiculous. Right, that's another piece of shielding off. It can't be like that. This honestly appears that this shielding here is actually welded together. Alright, let's have a look. Let's take the connections for the backlight out. And this does use old-fashioned compact fluorescent backlights. It's not LED or anything, but it is quite an old monitor really, or TV. Come on, there we go, that's that one out. There's not many hours on it, even though it is getting on a bit. So I'm surprised it's failed like it has. Right, there we go, they're out. No. I can't honestly, I think this whole thing has to come out as one assembly, and then you probably access it from the other side, so let's disconnect these and see. So this side has 2 screws. We've actually got 4 screws up to now inside it. Everything else is little horrible clips. So let's get the back off this and let's have a good look. Right, now hopefully, yeah. Now that all lifts up as one module. Hopefully we can disconnect. Yeah, it's safer to disconnect it from there, like that. Okay, so we've got the bit that we want to look at, and we can put the actual screen to one side for now. So put that out of the way, out of harm's way, and let's have a look here at the main board. I'll just get you a little bit closer, I think. Okay, now here is the power supply section, here is the logic section. Oh, and as you can see, our strip poker has loaded. Okay, let's play. I won't show any of that on here. I'm sure someone would object to me showing strip poker, even if it is on a 48K Spectrum. But that's another tape tested. And grab another one. Might as well do this while I'm here. Hyperactive. I think that's a cover tape. I think that's off a magazine or something. Let's try that. Anyway, we'll see if that loads. We'll get back to where we're looking. So we were saying this is the logic side here, and this is the power supply. And very nicely, actually, everything on here is really well labelled. We've got BRT power, grounds plus 15 volts, BRT analog and 5 volts. So obviously, you know, it is quite well made, even with its issues, like with the incredibly crap construction. But we're going to get this power supply out and we'll have a look at that first, because we should be able to power that up on its own. And we can test the voltages coming out of it, and we can actually see what is meant to be coming out of it. Let's get this connector off, which is being incredibly awkward. In fact, I'll take the board out and then try and get that connector off, because it is being extremely awkward. I'm going to take that one out as well. That's a big bugger. Let's get you out. Right, okay. Now we can lift out the PCB. Now I've got to be careful, because there is a potential that some capacitors are on here which are charged, being that we have just had it powered up. I know nothing come on, but you can never tell whether there is any charge stored in here. So we will be very careful getting this out. It does appear just to slide up, so we want to be ultra careful. There we go. And that's the power supply out. Let's just disconnect that. And there we go. That's the power supply board. Let's put that to one side for a minute, and we will have a look at this board. It's very typical of the type of power supply board you get in these type of monitors, as in it's got the power supply for the low voltage section and the high voltage inverter for the backlights, all as one, basically one unit. We've got our mains input there. We believe we have a fuse there, some input protection circuitry, and then the actual switch mode power supply, which is basically this section here. Some switching transistors, the transformers, etc. And the capacitors. Oh, we have another fuse there as well. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, just 7 electrolytic capacitors. And to be honest, I can't see any of them that have bulged. I can't see what make they are. Begins with S. They're not Nichicon or Rubicon or anything like that. They're something cheaper. CapExCon on the main 100 UF 450 volt smoothing cap. Well, like I said, the other ones, I am really not sure what make they are, but none of them actually show any sign of leaking or of bulging or of any distress. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we'll just check these fuses and see if these fuses are of any good at all. And then of course we've got to see if I've got a oh, and just to show, that piece of software is also loaded there. That's another tape we've got for the collection to go through. I'm not actually playing any of these tapes or anything. I'm just seeing which cassettes actually load and which don't. So yeah. So what we will do is we'll get the old test meter out, and we will check those fuses and see if we've got a bad fuse anywhere, and we will take it from there. Let's get this connected up. Set that over to continuity. Okay. And we will get this bottom cover off. Let's see what we've got. We can just close these up, and that there is the capacitor that you have got to be mindful of. In fact, we will just see if there's any voltage left in that capacitor, because that has the potential to charge up to 400 and odd volts, and you know about it if you touch it, put it that way. So we're just going to connect. That's on the negative side. I'm just going to go on the positive side and see if we get any. I'll put my meter so you can see the screen, and we will see if we've got any residual voltage in that capacitor. So we put that on there, and we see there's nothing there at all. It's absolutely dead, that capacitor. It's got no charge remaining in it. And this isn't recommended, but just as an added extra precaution, what you can do is you take a screwdriver and just short it across the capacitor. Now if that had a charge on it, you'd have had a big crack and a flash, and probably a little chunk burnt out at the end of your screwdriver. But as you can see, that capacitor is completely dead, which would possibly mean that, seeing we've just had it on, had power on it, that power's not getting to it, and it could be that fuse there. Because that's the input fuse that protects the low voltage side, or it protects the low voltage side driving that inverter there. So let's get the bottom cover off. We can be a little bit more gung-ho with it now. We know that there's no charge on that capacitor. The other capacitors really don't matter. They can't hold a charge which is significant. So the main output on this is like 15 volts, so the most they'll ever charge up to is like 15, perhaps 20 volts. Anyway, we've got the bottom off, and we can have a look at that fuse now, which is around here. Let's spot it. There it is. It's them two connections there. So we take the meter again, we put it on continuity, we can try that fuse, and that fuse is okay. As you can hear, I go across the contacts and that fuse is fine. So what we will do is we'll just test that fuse there. You can see that on shot. I'm a little bit baffled now. I was expecting possibly to find that was bad. Let's try and find the contacts to this other fuse. There it is, and that's the other fuse there, F201, and again that is good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually power this power supply up on its own and see what voltages we're actually getting out of it, as we can test the voltages there on the end on that connector. In fact, there's even a legend here telling us what the voltages are, so we know where our grounds are and things like that. So what I'm going to do is, and I will say this most definitely, only attempt this if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't be probing round on bare power supplies like this, because you can kill yourself. There are voltages here, there are mains. You'd have to be bloody stupid to do it. You can get a nasty shock though, even if you don't kill yourself. So basically what we've done, we've powered it up. The other side currently isn't plugged in, and I'm going to put that. I should really use my isolation transformer for this, but it's in storage at the moment. I will get that out and actually get it set up in the workshop. But what we will do, in fact we will connect our, we'll do this as properly as I can. We will actually connect the meter up first. I'll put that in shot so you can see what it's showing. And what we will do is we will connect this to where we know there is a ground, which is them pins there on the connector. So if we go inside the connector, and all we're doing is we're making sure we've got a contact to ground. We're not touching any other pins in there, just the ground pins. And them three pins all connect together anyway, so it doesn't matter if we just get over a couple of them. Like that. Okay, we've got a ground there, and we're not affecting any of the other pins, so we can test that. And in fact, we can see which are the 15 volts, which is the other. There's a 5 volts on there as well. Now it could be that this thing's soft power, so only one of them will be connected, and then when you ground out, say the 5 volts, that actually brings the 15 volts line up. That's how some of these power supplies work, but we won't know that until we actually try it. So what we will do is we will plug it in, and switch on, and we'll see what we get out of this power supply. So as you can see, just one hand, my other hand is in my pocket, so I'm only ever touching the board with one hand. And we will start with this pin here, and we've got nothing on that pin. Now we will go over onto where it's the 15 volts, and indeed there we go, we do have our 15 volts, no problem there. And the other one is ground. I think that's the 5 volts. Well, it looks like we've got our 15 volts there, which is the main power, and we've got our ground. So that means we've got another fault, unfortunately. I don't think it is the power switch on the actual thing. I don't think. I'm going to just switch this off because it's Not safe to leave things like that connected up, and we'll just double check we've not got what voltage we've got on that smoothing cap. Now it's just been powered up, so we have proof that this thing is working. It could have a bleed on that capacitor. Some modern power supplies have a bleed, so they won't retain a charge on the capacitor. Let's just switch that on, and we will. This is now unplugged. We will. We'll just see if we've got any charge on that, and no, as you can see, there's nothing there at all. So this does have some form of bleed on the main smoothing capacitor, so it doesn't stay charged, which is nice. It's a nice safety feature, that. But no, it looks like the power supply is actually working. We could have a bad rail on it. Like I said, there are some other things marked on there, but the main one is the 15 volts on the ground, and we're definitely getting the 15 volts on the ground. I think the others maybe something to do with like a soft power mode or something like that. But I have a feeling it means that the fault we may have is in here. Or I don't think it's possibly the power switch, because I have a feeling when you actually just plug this thing on, at least it shows the green light before you press the power switch. I could be wrong on that though. In fact, we'll test the power switch, because it's very nice and easy to test. We can get to it at the front there, and we can get it to it at the back there. So all we need to do is put the meter on continuity. Now that side goes to ground, so we can just clip that to ground, like so, or at least hold it on ground. This is one of them instances where you need about four different hands. Hold that on ground, hold that on there, and press the button, or at least get this thing to clip onto ground somewhere. That's probably the best ground to clip it onto. Okay, and let's try the power switch, if I can find it. Yeah, as I thought, there's nothing wrong with the power switch. We can, just as an aside, chase it up to here. Basically, try it up to the connector where it goes onto the motherboard. We'll just try that. I'm sorry I can't show this on camera, but I've got it balancing on my knee, and as we just press the button, there we go. Yeah, so that seems to be working up to the main board. This isn't looking too good, unfortunately. So I was hoping I'd find a fault in the power supply, but it does look like we may have a fault in here instead. So let's get this board out and have a quick look, see what we've got. In fact, what we'll probably do is we'll take this board out, we'll connect it up to that board, we'll power it up, and we will see what voltages we get on what parts of this board. Because the first rule of fault tracing is thou shalt check voltages. Yeah. I did it again, didn't I, and let my battery on my camera fail. So hopefully we've not lost too much footage there. As you can see, I've got all the boards. We've got the power on board there, we've got the logic board, and we've got the power supply all connected up now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to power this up, and then we will test some voltages, and we could probably test on some of these capacitors actually, and see what voltages we're getting on that board there. Because like I said, we know we've got 15 volts coming off there. We know that's working okay. So without further ado, let me power this back up. Because obviously utmost Oh, that was interesting. The LED over there, I don't know if you saw that on camera, actually lit up, which it hasn't done before. Oh, that's odd. let's just oh, well, that's now actually responding to the, as you can see. I can touch this. This is safe to touch, so we don't touch that. But you can see that there. But that's actually powering up now. That's quite strange, because that definitely was not powering up before. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to reassemble the monitor, at least to some degree that we can actually test it all working together. Now, I don't know whether we've lost this bit of footage or not, but what I will do is I will power off. We've already ascertained that this capacitor here, which is the one you've got to be careful on, has got a bleed resistor on it. It doesn't retain a charge, but even so, just for absolute safety's sake, I'll just make sure that that capacitor is completely discharged before we work on this board. Like I said, you probably saw me do this before, but I don't know if I've lost that little bit of footage when I forgot to press record. Not press record, I forgot to charge my battery. Right, so anyway, let's check that. And as we can see, it's completely dead, so that's good. Happy with that. We can safely touch this thing now. It is powered off. So let's take this back apart, and we will reassemble it back into the back piece, and we will roughly put this monitor back together and see how well it works. That's quite puzzling. Like I said, it definitely, well, you saw me before I tested it, and definitely didn't work. So all of a sudden it's gone from no power light coming on at all to the power light coming on. Let's put this logic board back in. Let's connect that back up. Of course, the fun with these things, especially when there's so many bloody clips, is actually getting them all back together. Let's get this back in where it's meant to live. That's in there, I think. That looks about right. And we've got to put these back in there. Yeah, there is another Spectrum game loaded in the background. I will have to do something about that monitor because it's definitely not happy. You can see it's loading okay, but the picture is abysmal on it. But let's just put them back in. So that's that board sat back down. We need the screw for in there, which is not one of them, is it? Where is it? Is it one of them? Yes, it is. Okay, so that board's back in. Let's turn my heater down because it's getting rather warm in here. And then we will reconnect this board here. And that slots back down like. Is it going in like that? It doesn't seem to be going in quite right there. Ah, there we go. I wasn't quite far back enough, I don't think. Is that right? It doesn't seem to be fitting in. Ah, that's why. You have to put it in an odd way. You've got to kind of feed it in a little slot there and then drop it in. There we are. So that board's back in place. Oh, hang on. No, I haven't quite got it back in. There we go. Now it's back in place. Ooh. If I can pick this up. Ah, come on. There we go. Right, now we need to put that back where it lives, which I think is like that right? No. Like that. That's right. And all we do is put these little clips back in. Ooh. Tape's falling at me. And that one. And that one. And put the screws back in that hold this in. This big one is the earth clamp there. We can screw that back in. Basically just going to get it to a point where it's safe enough for us to connect it back up to the display and actually see whether it's going to be doing anything. So that one, and there's the last screw goes in there. Oh, excuse me. Right, that's all that lot back together. Now the power needs to plug back in there like that. That obviously goes onto the LCD. A little piece of plastic needs to go back in there, and I think we'll put it back in now because it's probably one of them bits that if we leave it, we won't be able to get it back on later on. I think it just clips in. There we go, that's clipped back in. Right, let's just bring the actual main panel back into the show. We really haven't done anything to this at all. It's quite strange actually. All we've done is found a few things that he definitely isn't at fault, like the fuses in the power supply. It was I showed when we first started we were getting absolutely zero out of it, and then all of a sudden, as soon as we get it apart and on the bench, using the same IC connector, we connect it all up and we get a green light on the front display, which is really strange. Whether there was a bad connection somewhere, and just this does happen actually quite a lot. You get a bad connection, you take something apart, don't find anything wrong, put it back together, and it suddenly mysteriously starts working again. Okay, now that's sat back down. We're not going to screw it. Should we put a couple of screws? Yeah, we'll put a couple of screws in just for safety while I'm moving this thing around. So we'd hate the board to shift and something to short out. So just for our own peace of mind, we'll just bang a couple of screws in. And incidentally, we have another piece of software loaded, so that's another one. What's it? Silkworm. That's another game I can try out at a later date. That's another one tested. Well, tested to boot anyway. Let's restart the spec here. Let's grab another one. Oops. Well, that's quite cool. I mean, I know it's a pirate tape or anything, but I think that's been done on like one of the original Spectrum printers. It's definitely been done on, yeah, it's been done on like a very old printer. That we'll try that. So it is a pirate, but we'll try that just for the fun because I like the label on it. Let's stick that back in the. I'm getting distracted from what I should be doing with that. Anyway, right. So we've got this back down and secure. We will reconnect the backlights. That's that backlight connected. Let's just get that started and see if that game loads. Connect the backlights back up. Oops. Got that cable caught slightly. Right, there we go. So we've got the backlights reconnected. We can connect this speaker back in. We don't need it for testing, but it means we won't forget it later. And for now, what we're just going to do is we're just going to connect this up, but we're not going to feed it back to where it should go on the case, because we just want to see whether this thing's actually going to do anything. So we have got that board connector back in. We've got the display and everything connected back up. We've got the power board connected back up to the logic board. So I think the next thing to do is give it some of this and then switch on and see what happens. We've got power in, and I will just switch on, and let's just see. Well, we've got a light come on there, which we didn't have before. And have we got anything on this? And look at that. And as you can see, we are up and running. Strange, very, very, very strange. Right, so let's just we'll unplug that, and we will put this back together, and we will connect the old Specky up to it and see what happens. Let's put some screws back in it. That is really, really strange, but like I said, it's not actually unheard of. I have done this in the past where I've had something that was completely dead, and I took it apart and I tested everything that I could think of to test to find out why it was completely dead, and I couldn't find anything wrong at all. I put it all back together, switched on, and lo and behold, it worked perfectly. I'm just going to stop that tape. I'll give that another try. It's not loading. We'll try it in 48K mode, I think. As well, the tape rewinds. Screw these back together. So I don't know if whether it come out before I lost my battery, but I was just saying I quite like doing these videos in real time, so it actually shows people the amount of time involved in repairing electronics. Like I said, you see a lot of videos and they're cut and edited in such a way that you think it's literally 5 minutes work and it's repaired. And as you can see, it's a little bit more involved than that. And go back down there. Now, not a bad monitor, this, really. Like I said, it was free. I didn't pay for it. It was left in a flat by a student, and no one wanted it. So, well, no one wanted it because it's an old 4.3 analog TV, even though it was still in its box, brand new. So I acquired it. I thought that had just come in for vintage computers, and it's a nice monitor. It works very well with the Amiga. That's what I generally use it with, the Amiga. I might even perhaps have my ST when I get that up and running properly set up with it. I've got two monitors very similar to this, and they're both good for vintage systems. Right, okay, now that's all back together. We've got to figure out how to put that bit of shielding back on. It's probably not needed, but for completeness and everything, let's try and reinstall it. Clips on there, and then they clip in like that. That's back on. We've got this bit of shielding, which is it from around here. Can't honestly see a spare screw hole for it, and it seems that it does have a screw hole. Oh, I'm sure it's not needed. Right, so next it's we'll put the back on. Hopefully it will just all clip back together. It's basically just a case of going round it and snapping it all back together. But there we go. Now that's all back together. And I think the next thing we're going to do, well, that tape's not loading on that. That specky tape's not loading, so we'll throw that to one side. We will reset that Spectrum, and what we'll do, I'll just pull this forwards. We'll take the audio and video signals from the specky, and let's see what kind of picture we get off this monitor. If it's going to play ball for us. I'll put some power up it. Okay, we'll sit that in place like that. You can see that's the monitor there. The external. It's got one nice thing is it does have composite on the side here. So we'll get the monitor connected up like that. And I think we need to select the source. It's a little bit noisy. But as you can see, it is actually working. So that's not a very good. It's not a very good composite picture. That could be this. Yeah, I think it's more to do with this really crap. This really crap video lead that I'm using more than anything else. And I think I've just pulled the power to. Yes, I have. I've just pulled the power out to the Spectrum. Let's plug that back in. We can find out where the power hole is. There it is. There we go. Oops, that's not good. There we go. So no, it's not the best of composite pictures, but I have a feeling that's more to do with this really crap unshielded audio cable than anything else. But the monitor, as you can see, the monitor is definitely working again. Bit of a strange one that. Like I said, that does happen unfortunately, that something's completely dead, you take it apart, you can't find anything wrong, and when you put it back together, well, it just works. So I'm going to leave that there for now. I hope you enjoyed that little adventure, so thanks for watching, and goodbye.